So we're going to make a running start now, I think. We've got many people on here. So welcome everybody. 14 participants so far. Thank you so much for joining in tonight. So it's a good thing we had that little glitch there in terms of the technology and me familiarizing myself with it, because it allowed many of you to join and you haven't actually missed anything. So I am H. Michelle Johnson, and I'll be your moderator for this event. Not only am I your moderator, I'm doing some serious multitasking here tonight, because apart from hosting and moderating, I will also be speaking as one of the guest speakers here. So I don't know if you remember me from the first session on the 6th of October. I was your moderator then, and we had the wonderful Dr. Joan Myers, OBE, as well as Paulette Lewis, MBE, who spoke on the basis of their vast experience, very, very seasoned, senior Black professionals in the NHS, both of whom are now retired, but actually haven't given up supporting and enabling and empowering and coaching and mentoring staff from Black, Asian, and minority ethnic backgrounds. And I think that session went really well. It was good fun to have them. And then the second session, you'll recall, you had two also very senior people, leaders, campaigners nationally around equalities, Patrick Vernon, the amazing Patrick Vernon. I wanted to tune in myself, but was unable to that evening because I had something else on. And also, was it the chair of UNISON himself who came along, the chief executive, Loxley?
Roger Mackenzie, that's right.
Yes, so I've not actually met him before, but I thought that was a brilliant person to come and actually address everybody. So I hope people are getting a lot really out of this Black History Month program. It's been sponsored by UNISON. And I want to especially note and acknowledge both Loxley and Pat, who are union leads for UCLH, who have really put this program together for the whole month, and actually have campaigned within UNISON itself to gain sponsorship for this particular event. So I hope that you really exploit it, take full advantage of the sessions and the talks and the speakers, ask questions. Remember, Joan actually gave us all a pointer at that first meeting. She said, when I put it out there, now is the time for questions and answers. And I got stony silence in return. Joan gave us a fantastic example of how she actually distinguished herself in an audience, because she was the only one who came with a question written down to ask the speaker. And I think it was somebody like Sir David Nicholson or something like that, who was then very impressed with it. So I'm giving you plenty of forewarning. By the time we come to the question and answer, perhaps in an hour or so's time, I am expecting people to be asking questions, yeah? So start writing, get your pen and your paper. What I share as well, I'm gonna give you some pointers around resilience, and you can take notes when both myself or Ruth will be speaking, but also note your questions down, please. So, as I said, I'm H. Michelle Johnson, I'm moderating, and as far as in terms of my background, I started off in nursing in the NHS. Well, in fact, I started out as a nurse, but I was in the private sector for about 4 years. And then I came into the NHS. And in fact, my first NHS post was with UCLH, as it happens. And I spent 10 years at UCLH. And I'll tell you a little bit about that experience, because the story I want to tell about my career progression is around that final sort of 2-3 years of being at UCLH, and then how I moved on from there. But apart from nursing, I have got a kind of, I don't know how to call it, it's not an alternative life or anything. It's just another life that I have where I do many other things as well, right? But I will come to that. And then we've got Dr. Ruth Oshikanlu, who's already in the audience as well. And she will be sharing. She's another very dynamic senior BAME. I know BAME is not the flavor of the month word acronym, but you know, it's easier to say BAME at this point than Black, Asian, minority, ethnic. Okay, so forgive me. I will use the word BAME during this meeting, but I understand that there's lots of debates right now, and rightly so, because we don't want to just be pigeonholed into another or clumped together as if we are one homogenous BAME group, and we're very heterogeneous. Okay, heterogeneous. Sorry. So. Again, thanks to Loxley and to Pat. And I just wondered whether there are any sort of senior managers in the audience as well. We would like you to just declare yourselves if you are 8C and above. If you can just pop it into the chat, your name and your job title, really, so that we know whether we've got any very senior managers or staff in the audience as well, please, so that we can acknowledge you as well. And we want to welcome you here at this event. We want to extend a warm welcome to everyone who's tuned in tonight. And I really pray that you will get a lot out of the session. So tonight's session, as I mentioned, is on resilience. And, you know, it's a topic that's very close to my heart and for all of our hearts, really, because resilience helps us to bounce back and to keep moving forward. So resilience is very, very important. Just a few ground rules as well before I go forward. And that is, there is a chat, obviously. Please put your comments in there. Any thoughts, views, opinions, please put them in the chat. And at some point, I will read them out. While the speakers are speaking, in fact, I'm going to mute everyone. I think everybody's muted now. If you would be kind enough to put your hand up on the Zoom chat, sorry, on the Zoom screen. If you have a question to ask, then I will unmute you so that you can ask that question. The usual rules around, you know, showing respect for other people's points of view and opinions. People will be sharing their stories. I'll be encouraging people to share experiences and ask questions. And we just want to be respectful. We want to give each other space to hear our experiences. And so in that vein also, I'll be asking you to share, if you're going to share anything, just be mindful of that. Do it quickly, keep it brief, get to your point so that we can respond to it, but also there would still be enough space for other people to bring their views and to share their experiences as well. Right. So I think, given that I am chairing as well as speaking, I'm going to speak first, and then that frees me up to then give my full attention to hosting and chairing and managing the chat and all of that, okay? So I am currently head of communications and engagement within an NHS organization, a clinical commissioning group. And I want to share my experience very quickly on a period of my career where I underwent, I would say, accelerated career progression, okay? I came to UCLH in 2004, but I started working for Professor Jacobs 2003. We were at QMUL at St. Bart's Hospital, and he was headhunted and he brought his team over to UCLH. So I came over with him and I spent, as I say, a total of 10 years. It was a great experience. It was just wonderful. I had just come off a gynecology ward as a senior staff nurse, got a research sisters post, and then came to UCLH with this team. It was a team that was doing a lot of groundbreaking, pioneering work around cancer genetics, familial cancers, familial gynecological cancers. So we were part of the gyne-onc team, but a subspecialty within that specialty. We set up the first familial cancer clinic in the country. And as a recall service, there was some counseling of familial cancers in general gynae and gyne-oncology, but to say there was a bespoke service, a service set up specifically to manage these patients, it didn't exist, and we set it up at UCLH. So that was a pioneering experience for me, especially since I didn't have much experience in terms of running or managing a service. As I said, I was a staff nurse working on a ward before I took up this post. But, you know, I suppose my story going forward, you'll hear that I've always taken risks. I've always dared to reach for something that might appear beyond my reach, but in fact was able to get it. And it's really because I've always tapped into support to prepare for interviews and the like. So I will continue to weave that theme as a resilience theme, because you need to be able to, in order to be resilient, one of the key things is support. It's the support that you need to be resilient. Okay, so I got the job as a band 6, and then I think it was probably about year 6 of that role, I began to feel very restless, wanting to do something else, feeling a bit of burnout and weariness as well, because when we're talking about familial gynecological cancers, we're talking about women who have like an 80% risk of developing breast cancer, a 45% risk of developing cancer of the ovaries, which is a lethal cancer, which isn't discovered until it's advanced, and women who would have had their mother, so a first-degree relative, a sister, a mother, or second-degree relative, an aunt, a grandmother, they'd seen their female relatives pretty much wiped out either by breast or ovarian cancers. So even though they were well, they carried this huge risk, and in fact, carried a lot of complicated bereavement and psychological and emotional issues. So I was the only nurse in the service as well. It was a vast multidisciplinary team of consultants, and I was the only nurse, lead nurse, clinical nurse specialist, wearing many nursing hats really, as well as managing the service overall. So I was beginning to feel a bit burnt out and weary, and also a bit restless, and shared that at one of my appraisals. And in fact, what they then did was offer me a band 7. And so I accepted it, and then I remained, okay? So I stayed on as a band 7 from that year, the 7th year, I think it was, until the 10th year, when I really felt that emotionally I was quite burnt out. I had asked for clinical supervision, I have to say, but you know, there was always an issue with budget, there's no money, all sorts of things being bounced back and forth. So I never really got that clinical supervision, and just continued to just kind of work and work and work, supporting. It was quite an emotional labor for me. So what eventually happened in about year 8 or so, I decided, you know, I really need to start thinking about something else now. By year 10, what I decided was actually, what was it in my career, in my nursing experience in that 10 years that was developing alongside that I can look at making a lateral move in? Because again, I'd become so specialized that it meant that, you know, I would either have to go back to sort of ward nursing or something else. But I couldn't say I was moving from the familial cancer clinic in London to go to the familial cancer clinic in Nottingham or something, right? So I was actually thinking, in any case, I probably need to step back from that specialism because of the emotional labor and the sense of, you know, burnout really from working in it. And what I realized is, alongside that, I had done a lot of involving patients. So again, you know, lots of patient experience surveys, setting up peer support groups for patients, doing videos, creating patient information using videos and so on. So I was working with our patients quite a lot in this sort of involving them in service development, but also in producing information to help women in their decision-making around managing their risk, which was the big issue for many of them. So finally, when I did kind of notice, okay, so I've been doing this involvement thing, I saw that there was a secondment opportunity for 3 months in Croydon. It was through Southwest London CSU, Clinical Support Unit. These support units had come about on the back of the Health and Social Care Act 2012, which created all these new organizations within the NHS: health watches, clinical commissioning groups, CSUs, clinical support units, which existed to support the clinical commissioning groups. It's a whole new world, really, for me, given my very clinical experience prior to that. So I thought, well, let me see if I can apply for that. It's 3 months anyway, so it's a really nice time, short time, to work out whether this is something that I could take on or not. And perhaps it would refresh me as well to come back to my old role. So I applied. I went for coaching, however, because imagine, in that 10 years, I hadn't gone for a single interview. And of course, I was very nervous about the whole idea. But I went and I got coaching and was prepared for the interview. I went in there and landed the post, okay? To my shock and horror, I got the job. And then came back to UCLH to say, okay, this is what's happened. Can I be released to go on this 3-month secondment? But of course, being there for all that time, nobody, including myself, had thought about succession planning. There was no other nurse for me to hand my role over to. And the consultants definitely weren't going to cover me. So there ensued lots of, not unpleasant, but it left me feeling quite hurt and upset. Because in fact, they basically said no. Long story short, no, I can't go on secondment because there's no one to replace me to do my job, and you just have to stay. So that had a huge impact on me. And when we're talking about resilience, the definition of resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity, okay? So here I was, after 10 years of really doing my best, working hard, doing everything that I needed to do. I just felt, so you can't really let me go for 3 months for my own professional development, for me to get a taste of doing something else. When I was seeing so many other people going off, doing all sorts of things as academics, giving lectures and talks and all sorts of things, developing themselves, as well as a lot of doctors that had come through our service as well, getting trained in this specialism and moving on. So as I said, it had a huge impact on me. What I felt was I felt taken aback, I felt hurt, I felt let down, undervalued, disrespected. It felt like I was like a child to them, that they were the ones in control of my fate and would determine what then happened to me. So all of that, I was feeling, upset, angry, sad, low, everything, a whole range of emotions just kind of came down on me because I was just so shocked that I couldn't be released for the 3 months. So that forced me to take stock really of my life, of my career, in terms of, carrying out a kind of a scrutiny, an honest examination of where I was, where I really wanted to be. Was I fulfilled? What is it that I want to do? Where is it that I want to go? So there are some points, as I said, around resilience from this story. It's going somewhere that I want to tease out. When faced with adversity, when faced with a challenge in your career or even in your personal life, your private life, it has an emotional and mental impact on you. Yeah, adversity comes and your response is an emotional one to that adversity because it's something unusual. It's something that challenges you. It challenges your values, it challenges your perspective, it challenges the way you think, the way you operate, okay? So there's an emotional response that comes out. And I described my emotional response to being told I couldn't go on secondment, even though I was burnt out, even though they still weren't giving me clinical supervision. It was a very stressful time for me. I had never experienced anything like that in my life in terms of how I was feeling and what was happening to me. It was a very lonely time. I remember it was nearly Christmas time as well. And my family had a big reunion in Tobago. I was born in Trinidad, so we all decided to fly to Tobago for Christmas. Everybody was enjoying the festivities, but I was in my room most of the times, just like really in a state, not quite knowing what I should be doing. But I made the decision, in fact, to resign. But one point I want to make as well is that I was wise enough to know that I shouldn't make a permanent decision based on a temporary situation. And again, because of the emotional churning that happens sometimes in adversity or challenge, we are tempted to act out of that emotion. So I knew enough that even though I was in this emotional upheaval, that I had to make sure I wasn't making a decision based on that. And that's why I talked about the deep soul searching, this deep introspection, working out what it is I really wanted from my career, where it is I wanted to go, and the like. But I came to the conclusion that it was time to resign. So in fact, I did resign. When I was in Tobago, I sent my resignation letter in. And I got some shocked responses to it, I have to say. Before I continue with the rest of the story and tell you how it all worked out in the end, and don't worry, I'll just finish in perhaps another 10 or so minutes. Resilience lesson number 1 is manage your emotional state. I told you how it made me feel, but an awareness as well that you can't lash out, you can't react based on emotion. So you need to manage when faced with adversity. In order to be resilient, one of the things you must do is manage your emotional state. Secondly, you need to clarify what outcome you want. You're facing a trial, you're facing a difficulty, you're in a conflict situation, you're in a, perhaps you know, even in a situation where you're feeling bullied or you're feeling undervalued, or even in facing a disciplinary sometimes, it's about what you need to clarify. What is the outcome when this storm finishes? On the other side, where is it that I want to be? Where is it that I want to go when I'm going through this trial? Okay, so you want to work with that. And it might be that you need help to do it. So that's where having a really good coach comes in to support you through those difficult experiences. So I felt that I had no choice really, because I was definitely not going to stay. Having gone through that time away and introspection and thinking deeply, I decided I'm not staying in this environment, because clearly they have little respect for me, even though they say they value my role and they got nobody else to do it. I would not be treated like a child. I just refused to be manhandled. And that's actually how I started to feel. You know, some of the people I was working with who had such respect for and felt that there was an affinity, that things became quite tense and a little bit of conflict between us. So I decided I wasn't going to stay in the environment anyway. And then I resigned. So by the time that decision came and I handed in my resignation, as a band 7, you have to give 2 months notice. They wouldn't let me negotiate less notice time than that. So literally by the time I worked that notice out, remember it was 3 months to begin with, I had 1 month left of this secondment opportunity. So I think they were thinking that, oh, she's not brave enough to walk out with just 1 month's work ahead of her. She is going to change her mind and decide to stay. But I had decided no, sink or swim, I'm going. So sometimes you've got to be willing to take some risks, calculated risks. One of the ways to manage that and to look at what risk you should be taking in a time of adversity is that you work out the different scenarios in terms of how things can go. And then you assess whether, you know, if this should happen, how could I deal with that? How would I deal with that? For me, I looked at what the worst case scenario was. The worst case scenario is that after a month of working in Croydon, I wouldn't have found another job in time. Or the only responsibility I had was a flat that I owned. And that's a big thing. I had a mortgage to pay. I don't have children to support, so it was just myself. And I thought, well, push comes to shove, if I don't get a job in time to continue, I will probably have to lose the flat or something. But at the end of the day, I can go back to Trinidad. Okay. At the end of the day, it's sunny Caribbean, you know, so it's not as desperate as it might have seemed. So finally, I got to Croydon, and that was a whole new world. Very, very challenging, because as I said, I was a nurse for donkey's years on wards, and then working in an outpatients clinic, working in a research team, all very clinical. But I got into the managerial side of the NHS, where the structures were wholly different. The ways of operating were wholly different. Within nursing, there's a kind of a routine. There's a nursing process. You know it. I could do it cycling backwards with my eyes closed. In this new world, managing in management in the NHS, in a clinical commissioning group. So again, commissioning, I had to learn what all that meant. I had to learn what the health and social care reforms meant in order to then be able to develop communications to inform the public of things that they needed to know, and work with the public, in fact, to shape some of the services going forward. So all that I had to learn, steep learning curve. So here's resilience lesson number 3, is to get informed. You need to be informed. In order to be resilient, you need information. You need to keep updated. You need to understand your context. You need to understand your environment. And I went to work on learning everything I could. Unfortunately, they had lots of videos because, again, as I said, it was a new thing in the NHS. In 2012, the whole health service from top to bottom was completely changed and redesigned with new organizations with specific functions. So I had to really get to grips with what all that meant, and then find my place in my job all within a month, so that I could function in that role. So you need to get informed. I mean, weekends, evenings, I was just online reading, online. Fortunately, NHS England board used to do their meetings in public, so it was videoed and it was all on YouTube again. So you could listen in and just grab the kind of key salient information that you needed. So when you're looking at being resilient, in order to boost your resilience, you need to be informed. If you're not informed, you can't be resilient, especially in a situation of change. You can't manage a change if you're not keeping up to date with information. Lesson 4, in adversity, you need good people around you. So I kind of mentioned that already. I had a coach, I got myself a coach, and I had to invest in that myself, who was on the phone with me and just encouraging, supporting, helping me in this transition. That coach was Lynette Phillips. Then I had Joan Myers, who was just a fantastic friend, motivator and encourager. She kept telling Michelle, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. That's pretty much that was her mantra when I was calling up, Joan, Michelle, you can do it, you'll get there, you can do it. And then a third person who became really key to me being able to do it was my new line manager at Croydon. Now, again, she wasn't from a BAME background industry. You know, she's English, and we're still in touch. Fantastic woman by the name of Frances Newell. Frances was just working out her notice in Croydon as well when I came in there. So in little time, I stepped up to her straight away and I said to her, Frances, this is a situation. Would you consider being my mentor? She couldn't believe I'd actually walked out of that other job as well, right? Because she wasn't at the interview when she didn't interview me. So when we had our first catch up, I told her the whole story. I just was frank and open because at the end of the day, I'm a desperate woman. I only have 4 weeks of work. So I just was, and she seemed approachable and she seemed sweet and she was leaving the organization. So I took that risk again of just telling her my story and asking her outright, will you mentor me? Even when you go, can you mentor me? Because I need your help. And oddly enough, incredibly enough, I'm a woman of faith. And so I believe all things are possible, really. And I move forward on that belief. Frances actually said, yes, she would mentor me. So even when she left the organization, she was still on the phone. What then happened was my secondment opportunity time finished, but however, the person I was covering who'd been on maternity leave didn't want to come back full time. So I got appointed part-time. So we did a job share, but I was still looking for another 2.5 days, 3 days. Frances was contacted by a chief operating officer of another CCG who was looking for someone, an engagement and equalities lead. Frances put my name forward because again, in the NHS, in that part of the NHS, there's a lot of contracting work that goes on. So you can go as a contractor and fill a spot, fill a gap. So in fact, I had a quick interview with the chief operating officer, the coup at the time, and she, on Frances's recommendation, as well as my performance in the interview, she said, okay, come on board and cover this person who was on leave. So that is how I then ended up with 2 jobs where I thought I wouldn't even have a job at the end of 4 weeks, right? So lesson 4, resilience. In adversity, you need good people with you. You need to identify the kinds of people who have experience and wisdom, who will be willing to help you to overcome whatever obstacle, hurdle, setback, or challenge that you're facing. Lesson 5 of resilience is the other decision that I made in that time was that I wasn't going to stay anywhere for more than 2 to 3 years. Okay, so remember I was at UCLH for 10, the job before that I was there for 4 years. And I thought, you know what, given what happened with me, I thought, number one, I have to change my mindset. I have to stop being so sentimental about the organizations that I work for. I am not there to be in any romance with any organization or have some sense of they value me and they love me and it's nice to be here and I know everybody, so I'm staying. It's a career that I'm building. So I have to be very objective about these things. Yes, you build relationships is very, very key. The world that we're in the NHS, particularly when you're coming onto the management side, is all reputation. It's reputation and relationships. But you have to learn to manage those relationships with a good degree of expertise and political awareness. But in my mind, any friend I was making, it wasn't about a social friendship or anything like that, because I knew that once I landed there, 2 years' time, I was starting to look for another job. And in fact, that's what's happened. So having left in 2012 at band 7, 6 years later, I was in my 8C role. So I went to 8A, then 8B, and then 8C. And that was an acceleration. So remember I was telling you at the start that it's a story of my accelerated progress in my career. It's because I was willing to move from one organization to the next, and getting a job, working on developing my skill, my expertise, my knowledge base, keeping in touch with Francis, who opened up a lot of doors and exposed me to a lot of opportunities to grow in my practice around communications and stakeholder involvement and managing stakeholder relationships. So I became so focused in that period. I learned, I took risks, I pushed myself, and then went to the next level, got the job, went to the next level, got the job, and ended up with an 8C, okay? I'm kind of like taking a bit of a holiday in a way now, because I'm 8C for the last 3 years, and I am not currently looking for another job, but we are undergoing a restructure at the moment. And so I'm going to see what happens with that. I do have different career goals now as well. So, and lesson 6, my last lesson before I come to an end, and that is, I think with resilience as well, to boost resilience, you need an outside hustle. So a side hustle is what these young people refer to it now. And perhaps many of you have a side hustle, I don't know. But my side hustle was, during those 6 years, I wrote a book. Because one of the places, Croydon is pretty far, but the other CCG I was working for was 2-hour commute one way. I sat down on that train from beginning to end. So I wrote my first book in that time. Once that book was published, a year later, I got the opportunity to start my radio show. And I've been on radio now for about 4 years. And I absolutely love being on radio. I do talk shows, so I host a talk show. Currently, the one that I host I co-host with a friend called Chatback, but the previous ones were myself hosting and just learning a whole new skill, learning how to communicate on radio to the world, as it were, and having guests on for interviews and things like that. Good fun. And now I've completed my second book, Bouncing Back, just this year. So, and I'm doing many other things as well. So I'm not saying any of that to impress anybody or big up myself or anything like that. It's just to say that I only share that to say that it is possible. It is possible, but you have to be prepared to step out of your comfort zone. You have to be prepared to take risks. The importance of the side hustle, I think for me, was to be able to develop a level of self-confidence that when I was in work in the NHS, I could conduct myself in a way that ensured that I was respected, that my personal brand as well is respected and given a good profile within our organization. And so if you're finding yourself in a situation at work where you feel that, you've got leadership potential, you've got senior potential, but whatever the circumstance or the system is that is sort of limiting that from happening, you should move on. Find another job somewhere else and or start a side hustle, because that side hustle, whether it's a business, whether it's, as I say, writing books or setting up some kind of a charity or something, will develop those key skills in you, will draw out the leadership skills, will build your confidence. So, there's a range of things. I've touched on a number. I've given you 6 lessons, key lessons, if you like, about building your resilience. And I hope that you were able to get much from that. So I will just shut up at this point. If you want to ask me any questions personally, now it's 6:42 right now. In about 10 minutes, if we get 10 minutes space to questions, then I could ask Ruth to come on and share her story as well. So were there any thoughts based on what I shared about my experience? Or somebody has put here, a second stream of income is always useful. So that is definitely the other benefit of a side hustle, a second stream of income. Absolutely, absolutely. And really, that side hustle can open all sorts of other doors for you. Having written the book, that has opened a lot of doors. Being on radio has opened up a lot of doors as well. Get invited to speak quite a bit. This year with the lockdown, I think of something like 12 times I've had to speak to different groups or organizations on on these themes of resilience, on these themes of mindset and motivation and pressing ahead, really, because I have lived the experience of all of that. I think there was somebody who came on earlier, very early on, who said that she remembered me from when I worked at UCLH. I don't know whether she's come back or not. Are you there, whoever that lady was? Are you saying something, Loxley?
I think it's Clara.
Yeah. Hi, Michelle. Oh, can you hear me? Is it okay?
No.
I've unmuted.
I thought, Clara, are you there? Would you like to? Yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you now, Loxley.
Hi,
Okay.
Michelle.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, yes. My goodness. I do remember you.
Wonderful. What an absolute pleasure.
Oh my gosh.
Your
Good to see you.
story is remarkable. There were some remarkable resonances with what you said and what I'm going through and where I'm going. Loxley and I we work together, so we do a lot to support each other. So without making too much of a fuss about things, having a good ally, a good friend, somebody that will tell you, you know what, this is, you are doing it all wrong. You're going to damage yourself if you keep thinking that way. Right the way through to, yep, do you know what, let's do it. So having that support for me in terms of keeping going has been absolutely remarkable. So wherever that person is, if it's in your workplace, home, life, good friend, another person that can make so much difference. If you don't have a side hustle, because that's something to aspire to as well as step out there. But so just
you're absolutely right.
A big up.
It's having a good person. Absolutely. And that's the word, ally. Having a good person that you trust. And in the workplace, that's possible as well. It's having a professional friend, someone you can come alongside with. In fact, it was very important to me as well when I was at UCLH. I did have such a person that you can just go and just share how you're feeling, share what's happened. And that person could talk it through because they understand fully what you've experienced and help you to work through it. And you know that you've got that emotional support, especially as a BAME person. You actually need to have that network of people that you can go to. And I'm just going to go off script a little bit and say, I remember we went to see Sade together at the Millennium Dome, didn't we? Fantastic. I never forgot that night. See, I do remember.
Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah, wonderful. So for those of you who are kind of listening, Michelle and our paths crossed when I was working in research and development.
Yeah, UCL.
And I'd been given quite a bounce down. I was working as an acting director for research and development, and restructuring and stuff bounced me down quite considerably from an 8C to a 7, okay, with payment protection. And Michelle and our paths crossed, and we gave each other a lot of support, discussing things. It was a very empowering time rather than a time of moaning. And I think that, Michelle, you're still doing the same upliftment. So everybody, this is a really wonderful, for me, it's a wonderful time, and I'm so pleased I've tuned in.
Oh, it's so wonderful to see you, actually, Clara. And I think you make an excellent point, and it's important to stress that, because the friends, so I said good people around you, and by good, just to unpack that a bit, it's that sense of someone who can be constructively supportive to help you to move forward, as opposed to a group of friends that you just sit around a table at lunchtime with and moan about the organization, but that's what you do. It's your hobby, actually. That's your hobby, is just getting together to moan about the organization with no view of making a change or changing your own. If you can't change organizations, because I do understand sometimes, people are choose to work where they do because of family commitments. You know, is a school run that's easier to get to or manage, or whatever it is. If you can't change your environment, you have to change yourself and your attitude to it. And that then helps you to remain resilient in that situation. But yeah, girl, we got to exchange contact details, and I don't know if Sade is touring again, but you know, if anybody else is touring, I'm game. Lovely. Are there any other questions from anyone? Thank you so much, Clara, for that. Anyone? Otherwise, I'm going to call people that I know. You know, I do remember many of you by some of the names I'm seeing here. I haven't heard from Lisa Hardy. Lisa, are you on the call?
Hi, Michelle. Nice to see you.
Oh, hello, Lisa.
Hi. I've been
doing?
watching you from afar, so I've admired your book writing, your great exploits, and also like the charity work, traveling to Africa, and like your women's lunch that I thought was specifically for nurses, but you know, I think Elsa told me now I could have come too. But yeah, it's been great. You are an inspiration to many people.
It's lovely to see you. Definitely lovely to see you, Lisa.
And you've been a great support to me as well. So yeah, thank you.
You're more than welcome. It's my pleasure. Based on anything else I've said, is there any questions that you have? Or so, are you still in women's health, or what are you doing?
For my sins, I am. I did move out, but I caught an unlucky break and ended back in the pot that I climbed out of. But yeah, that's how life goes.
Yes. Okay. So C. Johnson says this is great to know that having a mentor makes such a difference in your growth process. Solution instead of bickering. I'm telling you, I don't know where I would have been if I did not ask Frances Newell to be my mentor, if I didn't take that bold step. But I said it was desperate times, and I thought, well, if she can't, it can't backfire. The worst that could happen is that she would say no, and it can't backfire because she was leaving the organization. So she wouldn't have. I think if she was staying in a situation with a manager who then is you know, I mean, there's a lot of potential there for things to go wrong with that relationship. But she was leaving the organization, which is why I felt it was relatively safe to ask her. Okay, so we're on 6:50 now, and I think I will now hand over. I will just introduce Dr. Ruth Oshikanlu, who is an absolutely amazing person. I've got to pull up my notes on Ruth because, you know, some of these ladies have got so many credentials, so much they've done with their lives that I really can't do it from memory. But Ruth is an expert nurse. She's a midwife and health visitor with over 25 years experience in delivering secondary and primary healthcare services to both statutory as well as voluntary sector organizations. She is the CEO of Goal Mind, Goal as in Goal, a coaching consultancy. So there you go, guys, if you're interested in coaching. Ruth runs a coaching consultancy that helps individuals improve their performance at work through employee engagement. And we can all use that kind of coaching support to improve the way we perform at work. Very, very critical. Ruth is an author as well. She's a speaker, mentor, and also a Queen's nurse, a Winston Churchill Fellow. She's Fellow of the Institute of Health Visiting, the Royal College of Nursing, the Royal Society of Arts. She's the recipient of several National Healthcare and Business Awards. She's a regular columnist and has published several feature articles in numerous national nursing and healthcare journals. Ruth was appointed a member of the Order of the British Empire. She's an MBE holder, and she was appointed that in 2019 on the Queen's Honours List for being an ambassador for the health visiting profession. So nurses are, and midwives, health visitors, healthcare professionals, and I also don't want to leave the managers out because you can be recognized by the Queen based on work that you're doing that is above and beyond your normal job. Okay, so it's not just for clinical people, but Ruth was recognized as an ambassador for the health visiting profession by the Queen on her honors list last year, and for services to community nursing, children and families. She also received an honorary doctorate degree from the London South Bank University in November 2019. Enter the lovely and amazing Dr. Ruth Oshikanlu, MBE.
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. And thank you for the wonderful opportunity to speak with you this evening, Unison. So I'll be starting by telling you my life story, summarizing it in decades. So it's so hard. I did this exercise a few years ago when I had to summarize my life story. And I thought I'll do it in decades, starting with the letter R for Ruth. So I'll be sharing my story and also be highlighting the role resilience had to play. But then I will be concluding with self-care, because more than ever, this is when we need to look after ourselves. We're in the middle of a pandemic, not just having to live through it, but also to work through it. And it's so easy to give, and be depleted. And when you don't look after yourself, then of course you cannot be resilient because you're burnt out. So who am I? I like to start right at the start, because often there's so many things we have in common. Sometimes we have very strong roots, and it's so easy to forget that. A tree stands depending on the roots he has. The bigger the roots, when it grows into the soil, then the more likely that tree is able to withstand any storm or any adversity. So the key people that made me resilient, those who were my roots, my parents. So I was born to Nigerian parents. I grew up in Nigeria, West Africa, and I was the first of 3 children. I have 2 younger brothers. And I don't know how much you know about Nigerian parents, but they're very visionary and they're very practical. It is what it is, so they make it what they want it to become. In Nigeria, we don't have a welfare system, so parents create their own. There's no free healthcare. We don't have an NHS. So often you'll grow your own doctor. That way you have free healthcare for life. If you have a child, that's a doctor. Often, just in case you get into trouble, you always want to be a lawyer, someone that could bail you out just in case. And of course, the money matters. So often you have an accountant in the family to help you manage your money. So we being, 3 children, before we even had the opportunity to talk and start dreaming, our lives were kind of formed for us. So being the eldest of 3 kids, I was steered down the medical route. Because things like art, photography, if you ever wanted to do those things, your parents would say, get real. Well, how many artists do you see making money? How many photographers do you see making money? So let's get real here. We need you to make money. So that's what happened. I was the first of 3. And then before I realized it, I was steered down the medicine route. So I had to do all the maths, double maths, applied maths, pure maths. And then I had to learn the sciences too. And by the time I hit 16, I was offered a space to study medicine. But I thought, actually, I don't want to be a doctor. So I'll pause there and I'll tell you what I did later. I also want to talk about my grandma, who's 95. She survived cancer twice, and she's a big part of who I am today. Very feisty, stubborn. She doesn't know the meaning of the word no. And back in the day, she too was visionary, because I don't know how much you know about Nigeria. Again, it's a very patriarchal system where everything is done for men and boys. So as a woman, you're almost viewed as or a girl, you're viewed as a second-class citizen, which is why things like FGM, child brides, polygamy, some of those things still exist, they still exist today. So my grandfather became quite affluent, and often a sign of affluence is you get another wife. So one day, without any discussion, my grandfather brings another wife home after she'd had 5 kids for my grandfather. And she goes, I did not have an agreement to share you. So this is how she goes, I'm leaving. But again, in Nigeria, the children belong to the men because they bear the man's son name. So she was like, what do? I can't just leave my children. So she made that difficult choice to leave, mainly because in Nigeria, money talks. And this was a rich man, and she wasn't so rich. She had dedicated all her life to being a mother. So she thought, what skills do I have? And she's left-handed, very creative, lover of purple. Who I am today is really who she is. I've borrowed so much from her. So she decided to go to another part of Nigeria and gradually work her way, supporting a lady, working for her in a textile shop until she was able to get her own. And by the time we left Nigeria, she had one of the biggest textile stores in Ibadan, which is in West Nigeria. But what I think she sensed was like I was very like her, because she told me a story when I was about 6. She told me the story about this eagle. And this eagle was so bold. It loved to soar the skies and it was so free. And one day the eagle was caught. They caught it, and then they clipped its wings and put it in a cage. And then this eagle was very sad, and she was going on and on and on, adding all this detail. And I'm like, get to the end of the story. Get to the end of the story. She goes, well, there's no end. You decide what the end is. And I was like, why? She goes, because you're the eagle. Always do not let anyone clip your wings. And so that stood with me. But there were other lessons that I learned from my grandma, just by the way she lived. And she taught me these two. She taught me 3 things. You were meant to stand out. Don't fit in. She always used to tell me that. She always also used to tell me, know your worth and never settle for less. And the third thing is, know what you want and go and get it. So my parents were my roots, and my nan became my wings. She taught me how to fly and how to soar. And she ignited this desire, this strong desire for me to soar and never allow anyone to clip my wings. So let's get to my story in decades. Decade 1, not to 10. I've characterized that by rough Ruth. And because when I was a young girl, I was a tomboy. Because I only had brothers, I was quite rough. I loved how they played. I loved the fact they didn't have as many restrictions. I always had to be in a skirt or a dress. They were in trousers. They could climb trees. They had so much fun. I had to be cooking and cleaning. I'm like, this is not right. I want to do what they do. So often I'll dress like a boy. And then when I played with the girls, I was often called rough because I was too rough. So this is how I earned a nickname where no girls wanted to play with me. To be honest, I didn't really want to play with dolls. I just found girl stuff really boring and preferred playing with the boys. So that was my first decade. That was what I remembered of it. Then my second decade in my from 11 to 20 was characterized by rebellion. And I think this is when I found me. For all my life, I just believed everything my parents said, went along with what they said. And then I hit my mid-teens and I thought, actually, I don't want to live your dreams. I want to have my own dreams. And that was when I decided, Dad, I know you want me to be a doctor, but I don't want to be a doctor. So but there was also one thing my parents had taught me was to strive for excellence, because there was one time I came second and I took my report card home, really happy, excited, took my report card home and my dad goes, second, good. But did the person that came first, do they have 2 heads? I'm like, what's wrong with you? I came second. But that was when I realized excellence was an expectation of me. So just try and see what the themes are, and I will now move on to resilience shortly. Then I came to the UK and then I decided to become a nurse. And you could imagine my dad was so upset. You left medicine for nursing. Is everything all right with you? I remember when I said I was going to do it, it was like every single auntie and uncle I had, please talk sense into this girl's head. I think something is not quite right. I think it's the weather in the UK that has gotten to her mind. But what that did was it also ignited in me a desire to show my dad I'm not just a nurse. I'm going to be the best nurse you'd ever know. And I'll prove you wrong. I'm not a doctor. I want to be a nurse. And that drove me. So I toyed with several courses before I became a nurse, started my nurse training. At the time, it was Project 2000. I really enjoyed it. To be honest, it was quite easy to study because I love studying. And then when I qualified, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. So I took up a rotational post. Again, I suggested it to the practice development facilitator at the time because those roles were quite new. And I said, it would be lovely to get a job where I could choose 3 rotations, and then I'll decide at the end of the 3 rotations what I want to do. So I chose hematology because I had lost 2 cousins to sickle cell disease, and I wanted to know really much more, but I didn't know a lot about sickle cell disease. Then I chose A&E. I wanted something fast-paced, and then I chose HDU mainly because you couldn't go straight into IT at the time from being newly qualified. And it was in one of my rotations in A&E that I saw a baby being born. And I was like, oh, man, I love this. I could be a midwife. So that's how within a few weeks, I applied to be a midwife. And I really loved it. At the time, there was a document called Changing Childbirth that promoted choice, continuity, control. And I really loved it. I embraced it. There was also so my first job, I was on the one-to-one midwifery program, and really wanted to embrace what being with women really means. At the time too, we started testing for HIV, and we moved from opt-in to opt-out. So I saw an opportunity to become an HIV specialist midwife. I did some training and took up a role, mainly because a lot of the women that were being diagnosed at the time were from sub-Saharan Africa. And I thought, there's never a good time to be diagnosed with HIV. I wanted somebody that they could relate to support them through diagnosis. And then I did that for several years until I became a mom. That was a journey in its own. Having worked as a midwife for several years, I knew what I wanted from pregnancy and childbirth. Unfortunately, nothing went to plan. I spent, whilst I was pregnant, just went for a routine scan at 20 weeks, the anomaly scan, and I never made it home again until my baby was born. So I was in hospital for 159 days. That was when I learned the meaning of resilience. Because I wasn't sick. It's just my baby was in premature labor. And this was at St. Thomas's Hospital next to Big Ben, reminding me every single hour, Michelle, I know your bell rang. It was almost like an anchor. Oh my God, another bell ringing. That was what Big Ben did for me every single hour for those 159 days. So I had to learn to dig deep and focus on what I wanted rather than what I feared, losing the baby. So that was my first lesson in resilience for quite a long time. In fact, now I use it during the lockdown. I could go back to where I was then, and that's what's kept me going during the lockdown. So once I became a mom, I took a year out just to, process, heal from that traumatic experience, and then bond with my son, became a health visitor afterwards, went into as soon as I qualified, I was very good at looking for those opportunities. I was in one of the first pilot sites on the Department of Health project called Family Nurse Partnership, supporting pregnant teenagers and teenage parents. And I really enjoyed that. But then I had a very horrible experience. I was thriving in this role, but my manager just didn't like my guts. She didn't like the look of me. She didn't like anything I said. I think just the sight of me just irritated her. So it was after a period of thinking, this is a very high profile role. I could take her down the grievance route. But I remember a few friends telling me, Ruth, you don't want to commit career suicide. This is a high profile role. Even if she goes, no one would remember what she did to you. They'll remember that you were the one that led to the collapse of this in your area. So I decided, you know what, it's time to leave. And I left the NHS, and I've left the NHS since then, mainly because, you know, I just believe the NHS is good. It does great work, but sometimes it stifles creativity, the bureaucracy, what we do to human beings sometimes, the organizational trauma by moving people as if they're objects, you know, restructuring, closing the way people work without you make decisions about people without them and not realize the impact one has on them. So when I left, I thought, what am I going to do? So as a backup, I registered with an agency working on the side. And it was then I stumbled into coaching. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. I learned so much about me, because then I had to revisit my career up until then. And I remember there was a theme. I often didn't spend more than a year in a place. When I was allowed to thrive, I would stay. When I wasn't allowed to thrive, I would go. I skilled up in things like neuro-linguistic programming, personality profiling tools like Myers-Briggs, disc profiling. But it was one particular tool that really opened my eyes, and it was called motivational mapping. And what it does, you do an online diagnostic test, and then it generates a report. And it was then I realized what my drivers were. My top 3 drivers. Being an expert, I loved learning. I was one of those people who used to wait for April. As soon as the training manual comes out, book myself on every single course. And managers never liked me as a result. I loved autonomy, freedom. You know, I've left so many jobs where, because I was micromanaged, I didn't thrive. So freedom, autonomy was another one. And creativity. I love to start something from nothing and like to exercise my creative potential. So where I had those 3 things ticked, I would stay in the job if I was allowed to go for training. But whenever they say, oh, sorry, no study days allowed, before long, I'm thinking, you know what, let me draft my resignation and leave. I have nothing to gain here. So when I left, I thought, how can I put all what I had learned? And then I set up a coaching consultancy in 2010 called Goal Mind, because I don't think we get taught enough about how to set goals and how to use our mind to help us achieve what we want. And so that's what I do now, supporting employee engagement. Once they know what makes them tick, then they could put them in the right roles. So if you're somebody who's drawn to work for social reasons, like to make people happy, put such a person in your complaints department. They'll always want to make your customers happy. Look, I'm not dropping this phone until you're smiling. You know, there's a place for everybody. For the person who is money orientated, put them in a place where they can make money. And for a person who is who loves autonomy, give them the autonomy. Most private businesses understand that and will put people, which is why part of the recruitment process is an online diagnostic, so that they can know, okay, this is what makes you tick. Let's put you in the right place so you could stay here for as long and we can get the most out of you. However, in the NHS, we don't do that. We just recruit. Somebody's a good clinician, you promote them, and they're good at being a clinician, but they're not good at managing people. Some people, you know, some of the managers we've had that are people pleasers, and then they end up making no decision because they're trying to make everybody happy. So that's what I do today, but I was also missing the client contact. So I decided, how can I use my midwifery? I've worked all hard for all the skills. I'm a nurse, I'm a midwife, I'm a health visitor. I don't want to lose any of my registrations. So I decided to do, you know, some healing, and I wrote a book. I penned my first book. I've written 3 to date. The first one, the book I wrote at the time was Tune Into Your Baby, because babies don't come with an instruction manual. Because often what women want is like, oh, I wish my baby came with a manual. And I said, yes, your baby comes with your manual, because your baby is your manual, but you need to know how to tune into your baby so you can know how best to parent your baby. So and that was so hard to do because it required a lot of vulnerability. Putting myself out there, writing my whole life story. I remember clicking on send the last, you know, when I got the manuscript written, I'm thinking, oh my God, once it's gone, you can't take it back. So part of being resilient is also learning to tap into your vulnerability. And I'll summarize all these things in a short while. Developed it into an online program, and now this is how I support women I focused, I niched even further. Who can I best help? So now I support women 2 days a week, women who've conceived through assisted conception or have had a previous pregnancy loss, because that was my story. I felt those emotions, the pain. You know, I was in hospital all this time. I cannot fault the physical care I got, but the emotional care, really, when people ask me how I am, nobody really listened. Now I can be there with these women to support them, hear their anxieties, their stresses, but not just get them to talk about it. How do you manage it? So I call myself a pregnancy mindset expert, because I think a lot of what happens to us to determine the outcome is what happens here, our thoughts. So now, how do I fulfill my mission? I have a mission to be with women. So I'm still a midwife, being with women, not necessarily supporting labor and delivery, but being with her when, you know, I know what I wanted when I most needed a woman with me, and that's what I am to other women. Then I'm with child because one of my missions, my son is Black, we live in London. You know, before the pandemic, you just had to look at the news every day, another kid was stabbed to death. And so I've made one of my missions being tackling youth violence, the youth violence agenda, and for us to take youth violence as a public health issue. The way kids were dying. If we had see how we're dealing with COVID, yeah? It's a pandemic. It's an emergency. Why aren't we doing the same thing with youth violence? Why aren't we doing the things that matter to us? Black women are 5 times more likely to die in pregnancy and childbirth. Asian women twice as likely. Why aren't those things emergencies the way we're treating COVID? So I've made that my mission to be with women with child, but also with professional. And so the theme of this decade is let the real Ruth show up. Authenticity is the theme of this decade, because I'm having to juggle being a single parent with my business, and the last few months, it has been very challenging to so many businesses. Unfortunately, this year in March, I came down with COVID for 6 weeks, and it was really terrifying. And I thought, God, thank God I didn't die. But I feel like it reignited that mission again to inject my life with more purpose. So this year alone, I've been working on several projects all at the same time. At the start of the year, I went on my first leg of the Churchill Fellowship, traveling to the States to explore what has worked for them. How have they managed youth violence? Because here it's nice, in America it's guns, and I learned so much, and I've written a trauma-informed program that I want to share, not just with parents, communities, professionals, faith leaders, to have that village around the child that we had growing up. In response to COVID, I set up a platform called Virtual Mamahood, because all the IVF clinics closed. It wasn't seen as essential services. And so now I support women online. We have smaller groups where we all talk with each other, support each other, and so that they don't feel isolated. For about 3 months, having worked as an agency, I went back to work, do some agency health visiting. That's how I caught COVID. So I developed Carers Cafe, a forum where professionals, carers need care too. We're giving care, but no one's caring for us. And I found a lot of employers provided psychological support. There was nothing for agency nurses and midwives. So I created that forum. One of my biggest achievements this year is talking about Nurses and Midwives Talk. So since May 12, Nurses Day, I have done about 160 interviews of nurses, midwives, academics, retired nurses, health visitors, anybody that's in the nursing and midwifery family. And I have only just finished writing a program as well for Black, Asian, minority health and social care staff to help them with some psychological support, having worked through COVID. I am not unique. I believe if I can achieve these things, I believe that you can too. So what can help you achieve resilience? So Michelle has talked about some of the things that can help us be resilient. And resilience is just that bounce back ability. If you throw a ball, it bounces, it bounces, it bounces. So it's not what happens to you, it's how you recover from what happens to you. And it's that ability to adapt successfully to the challenges that threaten our function and survival, to be strong, to be healthy, to recover after something difficult happens to you. And it involves coping with adversity and adapting to challenges or change. So, how can we get resilient? There's 4 dimensions I've found with resilience. There's the physical resilience. So I'm not very physically resilient. If I had to run a marathon, I'll be gasping for breath. So that's one aspect, your endurance, your strength, your physical flexibility. But they're all linked. Then there's the mental resilience, that mental flexibility, the attention span, the optimistic view you have about the world. When you see the world, do you see problems or do you see opportunities to create solutions? And also being adaptable and incorporating multiple viewpoints, not being so rigid to think there's only one way of doing it. If I can't do it this way, if we were driving, we've put our destination there. Once the sat nav realizes you're on the wrong road, it just automatically recalibrates a new route. Are you able to do that? If you find there's a roadblock, do you just say, oh, I'm stuck. Are you just stuck there? You think, okay, there's a wheel here. I need to find a way. Do you easily look for other ways? Do you find those who can help you? Then there's the emotional resilience, because again, we're a ball of emotions, and emotions are there to be expressed. Do you do things easily, or do you force them? Some people believe everything has to be so hard that ease gets deleted. Because sometimes we make it so hard, and you think, actually, nah. And you speak with children, and they go, why are you making it so hard? Just do this, just do that. When they asked adults, how do you put an elephant in a fridge? And they asked kids just came out with little simple solutions, but the adult is thinking, we just complicate things. And this is why I struggled in the NHS. Then your relationships, because we are not an island. How strong are your relationships? Who do you go to bounce back from? And obviously, we don't want to neglect the spiritual, so we're mind, we're body, but also the spirit. Do you have that spiritual flexibility? And this is not necessarily religion. Your values, what makes you you? Do you live your values? Are you values led? Do you have a tolerance for other people's beliefs? And are you growing your intuition? Sometimes they tell you that gut feeling. And all of these are so important. So when you get a chance, do an exercise and see, if you're strong in one area, how can you ensure you're strong in other areas so that there is that coherence? You're not just, I realize physical resilience is one of my weaknesses. So I'm trying to get strong every day by exercising. And then when you have a problem, do you believe you have the solutions? That locus of control. When we were all studying to be nurses, we talked about the locus of control. Is your internal locus of control strong, or do you believe you have to get it from outside? What's your self-esteem like? What's your self-efficiency like? Because I think strength comes from within, and this is where people get resilient. Do you have any personal goals? What do you, because again, can you imagine just going in a car, you don't punch anything in your sat nav, you're not going to get anywhere. It would still be working, but there will be no arrow directing you, telling you go left, go right. And sometimes the way we live our lives is like we have no destination. We're aiming for nothing. So do you have goals? What are your goals? Where do you want to be next month? Where do you want to be in 2 months time? Where do you want to be in 3 months time? 4, 5. Yeah, forget about the 5 year. If you're thinking about 5 years, where are you going to be tomorrow? Because you need to be taking one step at a time in order to get there. Then meaning, most of my career, it's always been purposeful. I've always wanted to make a difference, and it's always been one of service. Who are you serving? What difference are you making to them? And then look back at how you deal with challenges, because there's so many lessons that you can learn. So one of the biggest challenges, as I said, was being pregnant. It was like no option. This baby is not an option for me to lose this baby. So I'm going to do whatever I need to do to keep this baby. You know, are you so determined? Are you so strong-willed? Are you so stubborn sometimes that you're on a mission? You're on a mission. This is where I want to go to, and I'm not going to stop. Even if I have to do a detour, mission continues. Are you easily adaptable? You know, if somebody said do something different, how do you feel? Do you say, oh, okay, let's embrace the challenge, or are you fighting it? Because it's very, very important that you're adaptable. No.
Ruth, we've just maybe about another 6 or so minutes.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just going to finish with self-care. So often we give putting everyone's oxygen on their faces, but we forget to put our oxygen on first. And as nurses, we're busy serving, giving. And sometimes you're giving someone oxygen and you're gasping for breath. So how can you ensure that you make self-care your goal? Mind your mind, you know, stay present to avoid overwhelm. Sometimes the whole day may be so big for you, you know, you could have a lot to do. Break your day into bite-sized chunks. Manage your anxiety, because a lot of what we worry about never happens. Focus on what you can control, not what you cannot control. And one thing you can control is your thoughts, your actions, your feelings. So Michelle has alluded to this before. There's sometimes an event is fixed, like the pandemic. There's not much you can do about the pandemic, but focus on the outcome you want. And then based on that, choose the response that will give you that outcome. Don't forget your body, you know, nutrition, hydration, exercise, sleep, relaxation, routine. How good are you with them? Are you taking your breaks when you need to take your breaks? Are you drinking water? Are you staying hydrated? Are you nourishing yourself? Then connect with self and others. I'll touch quickly on self-love. You know, do you really love yourself? Is that what drives you? Do you use gratitude, looking for the positives in any situation you may find yourself in? And remember, perspective matters. One of the biggest things I learned when I was hospitalized in pregnancy. Yes, it was 5 long months, but in comparison with my whole life, it was just a little bleep. And this is what this pandemic is going to be. You know, if you're struggling now, compare it with all the times you weren't struggling. It's just a little bleep. So although not ideal, that would help you. And then reach out. It's okay not to feel okay. Don't suffer in silence. Know how to get help, but importantly, seek help early. Personal help, professional help, financial help, legal help. Sometimes people wait, you know, I'm supporting nurses and they say, oh, it's going to disciplinary. And you think, goodness, when the problem first started, why didn't you reach out? So don't wait until it's too late before you reach out. Look after yourself. People always say you can't pour from an empty cup. I don't even intend to pour from my cup. I want to pour from my saucer, from the overflow. I fill myself up. So point it's overflowing, then I'll pour from my saucer. That means my cup never runs dry. And then I wanted to finish with a quote by Nelson Mandela, who is one of my heroes. Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. Because it's so easy to judge people by their success, but actually resilience, when all the times you bounce back, that's what shows really how strong you are. So hopefully you've gleaned some things from my story and some of the tips I've shared, and I will entertain questions now. Thank you so much for being an attentive audience.
Thank you so much, Ruth, for sharing that about yourself as well from the start, as you said. There are a couple of comments in the chat about where that resonates with some folks in terms of the elders wanting what's best for us. And really, it's all very well intentioned, isn't it? But we have to have the courage as well to choose our own dreams, as it were, on our own path, right? While respecting our elders, of course. Are there any questions for Ruth? Ruth shared so many wonderful things. I try to capture some of them when I put them in the chat. So she talked about self-esteem, personal goals, and that's a thing for me as well. You know, personal goals, having a goal has gotten me through many adverse situations and scenarios just because you've got an end goal in sight. And I totally love how Ruth put it about, in terms of the goals, it's about choosing, knowing what it is you want, the outcome you want, and then choosing a response so that you can get that outcome. Because sometimes when we're in the thick of it, when we're challenged, when we're beset on all sides, as I mentioned, as I stressed in my talk, don't let your emotions drive you to make decisions or act. You've got to step back a bit from that, manage those emotions long enough to work out what it is you want out of this situation when it comes to an end. And then you choose the response based on what it is, the outcome that you prefer to have, rather than sort of acting out of a hyper emotional state. The other thing that I liked from Ruth, I love that, Ruth, I've not heard that one before, about pouring out from your saucer. I'm definitely going to pinch that one. You know, because often we pour out of our emptiness, you know, we wring ourselves so dry. So you've got no resilience because you've given everything and you never top it up again. You're weary, but you're still pushing yourself. You're tired, but you're still going. Self-care becomes so critical to your well-being. And to then be able to create, to have your cup full, but overflowing. And then you can pour from what's in the saucer, what's overflown, so that you are always in a state of being able to give and support and help. So those are some of my reflections. As I mentioned, there's lots, I put a lot of it in the chat. Those are the things that struck me in particular. Ruth mentioned 4 areas: physical resilience, mental resilience, emotional resilience, spiritual resilience. All of those 4 things are important. And in fact, each one, she did say, affects the other. So none of them really exist in isolation from the rest of them. We are whole people, holistic people with these different dimensions. In order to maximize our abilities, our potential, our capacities, we need to be strengthened. Our resilience needs to build. We need to boost resilience in all 4 areas, not neglecting one or the other. So those are my thoughts about it. Does anybody have thoughts, comments, views? You can stick it in the chat and I can read it out if you're feeling too shy to read it out. Otherwise, share. Please share.
I put my hands up earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see the hand up. Forgive me.
I'm Caroline. I am in Australia, so I'm in complete darkness at the moment because it's like 5 o'clock in the morning or something. So forgive me.
That's
Thank you, Michelle. You had an excellent speech on resilience. I'm actually quite happy with the theme because I find especially with Black people, we really do need to build our resilience as we continue in this profession. And in the NHS, we all know we deal with lots of stuff. And I'm so happy to hear how Ruth navigated the system as well, because it's important to not only look out for the courses, but the navigation part of it, the execution is amazing as well. I'm so glad that you've bounced from strength to strength, even with your adversities. I'm absolutely amazed by how much, people can get through with the battles that we face. And like you said, fill your cup to full and overflowing so you can give more. I am stealing that one as well, because that's amazing. That's amazing. I've never heard it put in the analogy before. I'm absolutely loving that. So for me, I'm past UCLH. I'm actually in Australia for 2 years. I'm on a sabbatical, so I'll be back. I'm coming back for more.
Sounds like a great way to boost your resilience, Caroline.
Yes, it is.
I think
And it is
sabbaticals need to
testing
be
me.
added to our list of resilience building techniques.
Oh my God, it's testing me. After 16 years of UCLH, I decided I'm taking a sabbatical and I'm coming to Australia. So tell me, I am really
Wonderful.
boosting my
Wonderful.
resilience at the moment. And I am up against a lot and I'm learning a lot. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, I don't know what my next pathway will be. But I've moved from Sydney to Adelaide and I'm in another area now. I started work on Monday, which is absolutely fantastic at the moment. And I just can't wait to get in there and see what this new organization brings to me. But no, they're pinching all my skills and I'm absolutely loving it. And I can't wait. I just can't wait to come back fresh.
Wow.
With my cup full.
Well done. Well done. Well done, you.
But thank you both. Thank you
Yes.
both. It's an
Absolutely.
amazing thing.
It takes courage actually to be willing to take that, to make that investment in oneself,
Yes.
to take a sabbatical, especially of that length as well, and just take that time out. Yeah, it takes real courage.
Yes.
It's a measure of your self-love as well, and your desire to self-care and to be resilient. So well done, you. And we wish you every success in the future with what sounds very promising there.
Thank you.
So that I have a question from Jacqueline Jackson. It says, Ruth, fantastic talk. Thank you. My question, did you feel that you needed to leave the NHS to move forward with your career development and grasp your resilience? Did you feel you needed to leave the NHS to progress your career and to be resilient?
I already felt I was resilient whilst working in the NHS. It's just at the time, my son was only 3 and I felt every day I didn't feel safe at work, and because of the high profile role I had at the time, it felt the best thing for me to do. I don't always say that's the only way to go. It just was my option at the time. And that's another thing with resilience, is knowing that what move to make at that right time. So if I was in the NHS today, I may have thought, actually, this moment in time, that's not the best decision. But at the time, my son was only 3. I had learned so much about the impact of stress on a developing child's brain. I was going to support other people to parent their babies better, teenage parents. I couldn't parent my own. So for where my son was at that time, I felt I needed to get out of the heat. So there are times I stayed, because again, I believe heat is a refiner, and there's times I've stayed in the heat because I think, okay, there's so many impurities I need to get rid of to shape me. That's okay. But sometimes I just felt, I needed to leave. And I chose to leave at that time. On reflection, I must say, I probably did not help my case. I was much younger then. I had more energy. I was feisty. I didn't make it easy for my manager actually to manage me, in hindsight. I could have stayed if I learned to apply wisdom rather than to, as my mom would say, fight fire with fire. Because if you fight fire with fire, you'll burn the place down. You fight fire with water. And I didn't. I was adding fire to it. So I believe that I could have changed jobs within the NHS, but to be honest, at that point, that particular time, I had some other goals and I just felt stifled within the NHS. That I felt, the beauty about being a nurse for me, aged 19 when I started, it was the first time I saw somebody die and I had to do the last offices, but I supported them through dying until they eventually died. And I saw how it wasn't just the illness, it was all the dreams that were unfulfilled that they were going to take with them to the grave. And I thought, actually, there's big learning for me. We don't know when death is going to come. We've lost over 600 colleagues this year alone. So for me, that desire that it could end anytime, I'm on a mission. So I'm so purposeful in what I do. I have a big vision for my whole life, however that the length of my life. And I just felt, in order to achieve this big dream, maybe the NHS cannot support me in doing that. And that's why I had to leave. So I'm not saying you have to leave. Definitely if your organization's not supporting you, no one's ever super glued to the floor, you know. So I would say, you know, start planning your exit strategy. But resilience too means sometimes you have to stay and learn those lessons and, you know, plan your strategy for your next move. So, yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Any other hands up? Not that I could see at the moment. So someone had mentioned earlier in the chat actually about coaching and the availability of coaching. So Loxley or Pat, I know that there is some coaching available. So now might be the time to let people know how they can access that.
Hi, yeah, we do have a team dedicated to kind of coaching and teaching in the trust.
And is this a Unison team that's in the trust, or it's a trust team?
No, it's a trust team. It's by UCLH, and they offer it. And at this point, and I have to apologize for this, but I'm going to now out Clara, who's one of our coaches at UCLH, but brilliantly, she's also just passed her level 7 in coaching, which is, I think it's postgraduate level or beyond. So I know the work that she put into that, so I think it's brilliant. But Clara is one of our coaches.
Well done.
They do offer coaching, and the thing is, at the moment, they are looking for people to coach. So they have all these coaches that they've trained up, and we don't have enough people coming forward to be coached. So please take advantage of that. And if you want to know any more, I'm really happy for you to contact me and with whatever information you need, and I'll forward that to you.
Now, that's a great point there, because I heard that in the first session that they're looking for people to coach. Now, this is not just the only support service in the NHS or other places that see a real shocking underrepresentation of Black, Asian, and minority ethnic people coming to access and use the service, okay? So you've got a coaching service that your trust, your organization has provided for you to use. And it sounds like you probably don't even know it's there. But even if you know it's there, have you gone to access it free of charge, to use it? So that's the other thing, guys, about ourselves. We need to stop being so shy and reticent and reserved. It's there for you to use. And coaches are trained to understand issues of confidentiality. There's no chance of whatever you discuss with your coach or what your plans and goals are would be disclosed to anybody else. So you can trust that service. It's there for you. Why? That's the question I want to put out to you guys. Why are you not using it? Yes, Clara.
Hi, everybody. So I am on the coaching and mentoring steering committee. So a big part of what we are doing is creating a profile, our terms of reference, so that we make coaching be representative and accessible for everyone. There is a side, I would say, another piece of work that we're doing that is trying to reach out to the BAME staff in the organization. I've seen one of my colleagues, Cynthia, is on there, and she's been in there far longer than I have because I was out of work for a while due to being unwell. But there is a lot of work that we are doing for coaching and mentoring in order to support the groups of staff who are less likely to seek it. We know that the senior leaders, the top 400, top 150, band 8s and above will kind of expect it. However, a lot of our staff that are in the band 4s and so on don't even think that it applies to them. So it is definitely a piece of work that we're doing, and we want to do it in a way that people don't feel that they're targeted. Oh, you're only asking me because I'm Black. So there is definitely a lot of work going on around there. I don't know if Cynthia, if you can still hear me, if you can chip in at all.
I can, Auntie Clara. Good evening, everyone. Hi everyone, my name's Cynthia. I'm Staff Networks Development Manager for UCLH, and one of the networks that I try to manage is the BAME network, BAME network, as well as 4 other networks. I have been working with our one of our coaching leads in staff development, and we actually are currently working on a project as we speak to try and encourage BAME members of staff to look into coaching, and for us to actively try and attempt to actually provide coaches to staff members who are in the BAME network as well. So so it is all, you know, in the pipeline, but you know, we're doing this alongside our everyday jobs as well. So it has been time consuming and people have been off sick, but it is something that is happening. But once again, all I can really do is kind of suggest that we are encouraging staff members to join staff networks and having them engage. This is the only way. I mean, a lot of staff do hear about what we're doing, but a lot of the information is second and third hand information. And you know, by the time things are filtered down, I can't guarantee that they'll get them before things run out. So a good example was we had our first Black History Month event last week, Wednesday, and I had an email from somebody on Monday on the back of an email from comms asking if they could access the recording. Had they got the email from us firsthand, they would have attended the event on Wednesday. So, you know, a lot of managers aren't filtering down information and things are getting stuck, and all I can do is suggest that staff take ownership for their own, you know, learning and, you know, and their own progression, and joining the staff networks is definitely one of the best avenues to be able to do so.
Absolutely. And so there's a staff network. So Clara did talk about the importance of having like-minded people or people with similar experiences, or friends, with professional friends that you can go to and so on. So join your network, because they are always planning and working to see how they can better support BAME staff within the organization. And as well, I don't know about UCLH, but these networks, the BAME network is supposed to be well plugged in within the governance as well. So they are your advocates, really, that network, to be able to take things, concerns, not individual concerns, but in general concerns, themes that come out in terms of people's experiences, can be fed back to corporate level change drivers, people who can make a difference, and then the organization is supposed to respond to that. So the BAME network, the networks are there to challenge the organization on behalf of the people in those networks. So join the networks. And secondly, get a coach, go and access the coaching. So you know now, everybody in this group on this call here, every single person now knows that there's a coaching service at UCLH that you can go and access for free. If Unison, maybe you should take the names down, and if Unison run another program like this next year, Black History Month, and we find these same individuals saying, oh, we didn't know there was coaching, what can the penalty be for them, Roxy? What should we do about that? You know, come on, guys, it's there for you. Do it. It really does help to have coaching. Really does. Really does. Well, in your development.
Well, think of a very interesting and
so
great.
Gina. Sorry,
I just wanted to say just one thing, really. Sometimes we forget about those that aren't always at a PC, at a desk. I do speak to members who are on the front line quite often of a lower band, and I think it's time when they get to sit at a PC and read comms and communicate that way. I think we should, obviously, you know, with the way that we work, we're almost at a PC, but we do forget about those that aren't. And I think it would be really helpful to somehow push out information in a different methods. In the old days, when we used to get pay slips, there used to be bits of paper attached about certain things that go on with a magazine, and that stopped some time ago. But there might be another way of communicating to members of staff out there. I'm thinking more about, you know, people that are either in catering, in portering, people that don't often get communication through the trust in a different way. So, you know, it might be something that I might take forward and suggest. I don't know, it's just a thought. But I'm really happy to hear that we are doing this life coaching, because I know I could think of 10 people already that I would put forward as a recommendation. And it needs to be promoted more through comms. I think you know, sometimes we hear about these things and then it goes, and it's almost a week later there's something else. I think it just needs to be keep reminded, you know, maybe it's something, a topic of the month that needs to be discussed. Yes, we're in a pandemic, and there is every single day there's something about COVID on our comms, and everybody is so in tune to that. And I think we're forgetting about people at the moment who are a little bit feeling undervalued and rather at rock bottom, who have been overworked incredibly. We're short-staffed, we're pulled in every direction, and we need to get people back up again. And I think this will be a great way of doing it. And just want to say, Michelle, Ruth,
absolutely
completely inspirational. I wanted to be a midwife originally. Gosh, I won't even tell you about my story, but you know what, I did look at it about 10 years ago on a postgraduate course and thought I'm going to go down that route, but then my life changed completely, unfortunately, when my husband got ill. So I had to decide to do a different thing. And you know what, I've been sat here listening to you, Ruth, thinking, am I too old? Could I do a postgrad course? Oh, I don't know. I tell you what, you've really inspired me, you know, completely. So thank you, both of you. You've been absolutely inspirational. And Loxley and Pat, thank you for organising the event. And that's me.
Thank you so much, Gina. Thank you. And you're
just
definitely not old enough.
I wanted to say you're never too old. Even my 95-year-old nan, she still say she's 95 years young. There's still life in her. So you're never too old. You're too old the last breath you take. So as long as you're still breathing, there's still life there.
So definitely we need, in terms of communications, you know, we need to, you know, choose methods that for the different types of audiences. Okay, so, but perhaps, Gina, I think you make a good point. So not everybody is necessarily at their desk looking at a screen and being able to open an email or whatever it is. So it might be you can target team meetings. So the coaching service within the trust could just find out, for example, when is the catering staff having a team meeting? When is the admin staff having a team meeting? When is the portering staff having a team meeting? And get itemized on those meetings so that you could come and raise awareness of the service. Because those staff throughout the organization need it, but definitely those types of staff, those staff groups will be missed because, as you know, the nature of their job is that it's not at a desk looking at a computer. So we don't want them to be left out. And I think you make an excellent point as well. It's COVID, yes, and people have been worked to the bones, really. And this is an opportune time for people to get some input that will help them to be able to bounce back from having worked as hard as they have done and will be continuing to do by the looks of it going forward. So Caroline in Australia, I see that you've got your hand up again. Or is that historical? Caroline, are you there?
Hi, sorry. I was just saying that the trust has all of our sort of numbers. And here where I am, they have like different apps in the organizations. So it's quite useful to see, like they have an app on mindfulness, and they have an app that just focuses on staff health and well-being. So it sends out free massages and free physiotherapy sessions and different things, just so that they're not just thinking about the patients, they're thinking about the staff health and well-being in a different way. So it's kind of like nice if we see something like that done on a coaching level for Black and ethnic minority. Like, you know, we've been talking about it so much, but we're in an AI generation. Let's use it to our advantage, you know? So that's what I was saying.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. So there are systems across the world that in some regards are ahead of us in the UK. And it goes back to some of the points that Ruth was making around, you know, the bureaucratic nature of the NHS it means that sometimes it takes ages for a new idea to take hold, and sometimes it's so reactive, and everything we do is reactive as opposed to proactive, you know what I mean? But thanks very much, Caroline. I can't, you know, stop emphasizing the fact that you have a free coaching service, everyone. You have a free coaching service, and all you have to do is show up and ask for an appointment. Yeah, that's all you have to do. So I think it's whether, how do they, Roxley, maybe you can put in the chat, or Clara, just type in if it's an email address or a telephone number. How do people literally access it? Unless it was said before and I missed it.
I will. Josephine.
Josephine had a question. Yeah, she had her hand up.
I've got my hands up.
Josephine. So where's just?
It's just to say thank you so
Caroline,
much.
Put your hand down if you've done.
No. I'm just starting.
Carry on, my dear.
Can you hear me? I just want to say thank you to Michelle and thank you to Ruth. Honestly, you've really given me a food for thought tonight. And I'm so happy that I was able to join in on this platform. For you, Michelle, you know, when you said you only had a month left for your secondment and you were still brave enough to just go ahead and did it. I think what the problem is with me is the fear of the unknown, which I really need to get over that bit to be strong enough in my own mind to say, yes, I need to do this. I don't care what the consequence, it might be a good at the end, or maybe there will be consequences, but it's just to take that brave step, which you did.
Yeah.
And I really admire you for that.
Thank you,
I need to say that you all have given us a lot to look forward to and a lot of a platform to work on. So this is why I have to thank Auntie Pat for actually inviting us to this platform as well, because not only have we come and listened, but it has really empowered us as well in various ways. And to Loxie, I have actually filled in the form online for coaching, but I've not had a response back. And this is, I think, 2 weeks ago. So I just want to know, is there a time frame for when you can get assigned a coach?
Great question. Go on, Loxley.
Yeah, absolutely fair. I have no idea whatsoever. But you know what, I'm happy to look into it for you. Yeah, so I will. But I can find out this information, guys. So if you need any information on coaching, I will go out and find it. So please get in contact with me.
I think that's an important thing as well, because when people do make the effort to access services, if they're not getting a response, I'm not criticizing this particular service, but in my experience in the NHS in general, you tell people to access this, access that, and they say, well, I've been trying, I've been phoning, I've been emailing, I'm not getting a response. So it'll be good if that could be tightened up. And perhaps this email list that you guys have, just to focus on facilitating them accessing a coach physically, you know what I mean? Or do whatever you need to do to make it happen, kind of thing. So the thing is, we've just got 5 minutes left, and I did want to give Pat and Loxley a space to talk or say a few words, and also to point us to the next, because we've got a fourth event coming up as well, don't we? In this program for Black History Month, yeah? So if you can just, Pat or Loxley, just, you know, share whatever you need to share from your point of view, any thoughts or comments that you have, and also just let us know the date of the next event and who will be speaking. I can't remember now.
Hi, everyone. I think Ruth wanted to say something. She just put her hands up. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, it was in response to Josephine, actually. It was a response to Josephine, because sometimes we think the NHS is certain. If there's anything the last few years has taught us is how uncertain the NHS is. And somebody spoke about how they went 8C and went down to a 7. Yes, it may be with protection. Well, that's a very good example of how uncertain the NHS is. Gone are the days you could have that job for life. Not anymore. With all the reorganizations, the restructuring, where we maybe find ourselves competing. Somebody was telling me there was a time they have band 6.5 within your trust. I'm thinking, band 6.5. I remember doing Agenda for Change. There was nothing like a band 6.5. But this is how uncertain the NHS is. Even things we do every day, there's no guarantees. We're all going to go to bed tonight, yeah? there is no certainty that we would wake up. And when you realize that, it makes you reconsider the choices you make, that actually I'm sleeping in faith that I would wake up tomorrow. So many people don't wake up tomorrow. So some of the things we think are certain are not as certain as we think. And when you realize that, then you start taking calculated risks, because everything we do is a calculated risk. You get out of your house is a calculated risk that you will get to where you're going to. You know, there was somebody that slept in their house and a plane came and crashed in it. How unsafe is your house that somewhere someone comes? So there's no guarantees. And once you realize that, then you're able to weigh the pros and cons and make decisions to serve you.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Ruth, because it's something that I did want to say as well, and I forgot during my talk. I think I did mention that we're undergoing a restructure right now in Northwest London. And in fact, that is something that's happening throughout all the regions. Some of them have completed their restructures and so on, and they're looking to cut half the staff. Yeah, 50% of the staff will go. So it won't be long, because the NHS is about to go through another set of reforms as a whole. So it won't be long before at the commissioning level, all those restructures are done, and then they're going to be looking at the acute and other services now as well, to how, so you can anticipate restructure is coming your way. And so as Ruth says, you know, for me, exactly what she says, it's by faith. I just thought, I'm stepping off this cliff, but I am determined to fly. And I did whatever it took to keep my wings flapping like a crazy woman until I started to finally glide like that eagle. And in that flapping, really, it was Francis I was grabbing, it was Joan I was grabbing, it was Liz I was grabbing, but I was flapping because my decision, my outcome, my preferred outcome that I was working towards was that I would eventually find my place in this new landscape. And I have done, and I, you know, many years now. So something good could come out of it. All right, go for it is what I say. Just get the support you need alongside. So again, it's 1 minute to 8. Is there, so Loxley, Pat, anything further from you?
Pat, I just want to say thank you all very much for turning out tonight and to listening in. And a big thank you to Michelle and to Ruth for sharing your experience with us. Resilience, I'm sure it's all made us a little bit more sure of ourselves and what we need to do to move forward. I also want to just remind you that we have another session coming up on Thursday when we have 2 consultants speaking to us about various women's and men's issues. You know, part of resilience is keeping yourself healthy. So it's good to come and listen to some of these, you know, common causes that we actually suffer from as Black people. And we tend to sort of ignore them until they've got too bad. So come and listen to some experts. They've got some real good ideas that we, you know, things, what we need to know about our health and how to keep ourselves safe. Yeah. We've also got a young lady who's a lawyer who's going to speaking to us about patients' experience and what she did about her sort of health concerns and what she's still doing. So it's going to be a very exciting session as well. And also don't forget on the 30th that we have our very final session for October. When I say the final session, it's just for October because Loxley and I and the other members of the team like Lisa that's here tonight and Susie, we are thinking about doing things on a regular basis because Black Lives Matter and issues that affect us is not just for 1 month, it's every day of our lives. So we need to sort of come together and start building ourselves more and become more resilient. So this is one of the things that we need to do. So on the very final one, it's going to be about our sort of enjoying ourselves. We're going to have lovely music. We're going to have spoken words. Yeah, we're going to be looking at entrepreneurship as well and how we can actually improve. You know, one of the things that I think it was Michelle that sort of mentioned is about we need to have something else that we need to do. You know, it can't just be about just work coming to the NHS. What else can we do on the side that can actually, you know, help to keep us active, help to bring money in as well, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Yeah. So it's going to be a fantastic session that we're going to be having both on the 22nd and the 30th. Yeah. So please tune in.
Wonderful.
Loxley, over to you.
Thank you so much, Loxley.
Oh, just very, very briefly, guys. Thank you for bearing with us. But I'll just say, as you know, this event was sponsored by Unison, yeah, as part of the Unison Black members, right? So this is we want to show you that we are here for you. My word for you would be get involved, guys, because really and truly, we are stronger together. Yeah, as a unified voice, we're stronger. So all you guys out there who are standing on the sidelines or maybe thinking about it, haven't quite done it, get involved. We are here for you. But guys, I said, so our speakers, Ruth, Michelle, you've been fantastic, very inspirational.
Yeah, guys.
Oh,
yeah, thank you all very much. We'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you so much. Have a good
day. See you all on Thursday. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.